Hello, you are watching The Fight Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm joined by Spencer Oliver, as ever. How are you doing, Spence?
Very well done, yourself.
I'm very well, thank you very much. And also the Goodwins, Olivia and Steve, because we're going to talk London Calling, which is a big show that you can see right here on Sports Night Live in association with Primetime Channel 498 on Sky. A whole host of fighters at the York Hall Bethnal Green, a showcase of talent, and just give us a little bit of insight as to how you put this one together, Steve.
Well, it was something that we were always looking to do when we started promoting 2 years ago. Olivia was always going to be the promoter. I set it up so that she'd have the opportunity to develop doing that. I'm going to be moving more into management and Olivia will be in promoting. And we decided to, in conjunction with everybody at Sports Tonight Live, to try and give the public something they haven't had for a long time, which is free-to-air boxing, documentaries on boxers, preview shows, and everything that wouldn't cost them, because the problem with boxing at the moment is you're asking the general public for money, for subscriptions or pay-per-views as it was, and not everybody can afford that. And to get people back into boxing, it's important to give them free-to-air boxing, and this is what we're trying to do here.
And the youngest boxing promoter, not just in London, Great Britain, where?
In the world.
So how did you come to boxing? I mean, it's not the most natural route, I suppose many would say, for someone like yourself. So what's your interest in it? How did it all start?
Well, when I was 9 years old, my dad took us all to a trip to Las Vegas because he'd bought a ticket to watch Lennox Lewis Evander Holyfield. But what he failed to tell me was I was going off to see Pokemon. So off he went to the boxing, and I went with my mum and my brother to see Pokemon. And I decided from that minute I was not going to go and see the Pokemon movie again. I was going to be at the boxing. And then I left school, went to college, and then I decided that I love boxing, I love arranging events, and that's what I wanted to do. I got ill when I was younger, so that's where I then went on to college rather than university and everything. And I just decided that boxing was for me, but I was obviously too young at 19 when I finished my college to go on and become a promoter. So my dad became a promoter in 2009. I worked with him, got to learn the ropes, and last year I put my first show on in June and been going ever since.
Yeah,
fantastic. Very
impressive. I mean, I remember, Steve, we had a little meeting, didn't we, when you first was looking to get into boxing, and it's been amazing, really, in only a couple of years, how much he's come on leaps and bounds. You know, there's been a lot of promoters been out there a long time, had no TV coverage, not done a lot for boxers, but Steve has done a fantastic job so far.
And this is the point, isn't it? I mean, free-to-air boxing, we know about the problems that boxing's had in terms of attracting, you know, terrestrial networks and also even, you know, with other satellite broadcasters that have had problems actually keeping the shows on. You know, it's a natural home, isn't it, for boxing and boxing fans to see good, well-matched fights.
And that's the problem also. I mean, you've got the problems that some of the, you know, we get the Channel 5 coverage with Hennessy, which is great, but you just see, all you see is two fights. They finishes and goes off. And I think what we're trying to do is have much longer coverage with more fights, but very importantly that they are well matched, unlike some other shows where you know who's going to win before we start. Our home fighters may well win, but the real important thing here is, as we stand, the 7 fights that are likely to be on TV are going to be with all fighters with positive records. That's both on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and I do not recall ever seeing a boxing show that's available on television where every single fighter has a positive record. And I think that's what we're trying to do, and that's what's important, because fans are losing interest with seeing the 4-0 prospect against somebody who's got 4 wins, 28 losses. You can accept that when they're doing and starting off as 4 rounders, but as soon as the boxer goes up to 6 rounds, our attitude is, if you want to go up to 6 rounds, you've got to be prepared to fight somebody that's going to be competitive.
It's important. You've seen how boxing's developed from yourself as an amateur through to professional, obviously European champion. And then, of course, you've done lots of work in TV, in and around boxing. But how important is it now for boxing fans to get these kind of shows?
Well, listen, I think that's the point. That's where we've come to now, that people, you know, the crowds want to see value for money. They want to see the good fights. Steve's putting on a bill here. There's 12 fights on the bill.
Olivia?
Yeah, Olivia's, sorry, yeah, that's right. Olivia's putting on the bill. There's 12 fights on the bill. And every single fighter on there has got an undefeated record. Now, you could look through the history books, and there's probably never been a show where you've had every fighter on there with undefeated records. And you know, that's what the public want to see. They're fed up from going to these big shows and being disappointed. You know, expecting something and they don't get it, and it is very disappointing. You know, at a time when money's hard to come by, people want us to get value for money, and I think that Steve, that's what he's trying to do.
Give us a flavour then of some of the fights that we can see. I mean, just looking down at the list, obviously you've got Eddie Corcoran who's fighting Chris Aguadua in the main event, but there's so many that you wouldn't really know what the main event is, which again is a great kind of pointer as to how strong a show is, because Chris Hughes is mixed in fantastic company, and Richard Comey is someone that seems to have a bit of a punch on him. Yeah,
well, Richard's had 12 fights and 12 knockouts. And his last fight in York in July, well, he put on a fantastic show and was a great crowd pleaser. So it's going to be very exciting to see how he takes his step up in class against Chris, and obviously how Chris takes going up in the weight. So that seems to be a real good. But my fight of the night is Lee Markham against Michalauskas. This guy has had 4 fights. He's won by knockout in the first round, and his total fight time only adds up to 165 seconds. 6'1", hits like a mule. So, you know, he's coming over here because he thinks he's going on to bigger and better things. But our guy, Lee, he's wanted a challenge. We've given him it, and we're going to be supporting him on the night. What is it that actually gets you so enthused? We can see it in your eyes now when you're talking about the boxers and what you expect on that. I mean, what is it that actually does it for you? I mean, have you done any training? Have you actually done a bit of boxing? Yeah, well, I used to train. When I was about 18, I started boxing training with my brother down at my gym in Finchley. I just haven't got the time and a little bit lazy now, but I will get back into it. But I don't know, it's just something about the sport, it gets me going. And I also like to get to know the boxers a little bit, you know. I like helping people, I love to see people achieve stuff, and I just think it's a fantastic sport. I can see down the road with women's boxing doing so well. Of course, the GB boxers led by Nicola Adams. I mean, there's scope there to go down that route as well, I'm sure. Yeah, you know, any aspect to be different and to progress is somewhere we would look into doing. What's caught your eye?
Well, listen, Dylan White, I think Dylan White, Mike Holden, the reason that's caught my eye, Dylan White I know comes down our gym sparring sometimes with Derek Chisora, undefeated, exciting prospect. I think he's about 5 or 6 unbeaten, is he? 7 unbeaten, yeah, so very exciting prospect. Now he's boxing a guy called Mike Holden. Mike Holden was boxing when I was boxing.
He's 73.
84. Yeah, he was boxing when I was boxing, and he was British champion. He was a journeyman, it was like a fairy tale story. Journeyman, won 7, lost 4, boxed the British title against Julius Francis, just given the shot, won the title, and sort of for the next 12 or 18 months went on leaps and bounds, defending the title and stuff, and then lost it and sort of like feathered away. And that was, I'm not going to lie to you, about 14 years ago. Now, all of a sudden I've seen his name on the bill. Now I remember him as a real tough cookie, and it'll be a good test for Dylan White, depending on what Mike Holden's got, but it's sort of caught my eye because he's a name that I remember from a long time ago. So for me, that will be a really interesting one.
And Irish Lightning himself, Dean Byrne, who of course started his pro career over in Australia, didn't he? Came here and he took a real shot with Frank Horter, didn't he? It didn't work out. But he's got to get back there, and you know he's one that people were talking about. So that's an interesting fight. I mean, to see him. I
mean, Dean's a globetrotter. He's been everywhere and fought for everyone. And he's now linked up with Mickey Amu at the Streetwise gym in Loughton. And I think that Frank Horter was a serious error. He did it to save the bill, because that was the time when Gavin pulled out, and he went in to save the show. And that's happened on a few occasions, and I don't really think that boxers often that save the show, they lose because it's a fair task for them, but he lost again afterwards because his confidence was shot, and then left Frank Warren. I think really, none of our boxers would ever step in to save a show. I don't believe a show should be saved just for a boxer to take the wrong fight. I think it's really important that boxers take the right fight. And I think Dean Byrne is an example, when I would talk to our boxers, of, in my opinion, that you must take the fight when you're ready, not when it suits any particular promoter, although I do understand promoters' positions because we're promoters ourselves. But I think he's an example of where he took the wrong fight at the wrong time, and it's set him back quite a bit.
And I know he's been sparring with Comey, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And also, Comey's been sparring with Frampton.
Yeah, Comey does a lot of sparring with Frampton, and the sparring is electric, apparently. I think Comey is a serious talent, and these Ghanaians, traditionally, they train in Ghana, come over here and are fed to the British fighters. With Mickey Amu being based in Britain and being Ghanaian himself, he is going to get these Ghanaians, and the really good ones, he's going to back them. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to Richard Comey, because they're aiming for Ricky Burns in 12, 24 months. It's big talk, but he is very, very exciting, and I'm really excited to see this fight.
And ultimately, this is what this show's all about, isn't it? I mean, you want to see, we all want to see the talent here and how far these guys can progress, because many people won't know too much about some of these names, but it's all mapped out in your heads, isn't it, in terms of how far they're going?
Yeah, it is, yeah. We have long-term, like, plans for all our boxers? Because we want...
I think the secret is when you get a good fighter, it's not always the best fighter that gets to the top, it's the one that's guided the right way and managed well and looked after and taking the right fights at the right time. I think that's how a fighter really gets to the top. Now, you was mentioning about the Ghanaians. I had a close connection when I was amateur turning pro with the Ghanaians with Azuma Nelson and Alfred Cote and stuff. So I'd been over there and you've seen so many good fighters that I've never even heard of. Because like you said, they're brought over and they're used and abused really, and then they're sent back to Ghana. But if they're guided right, and then they'll go to the top, and that's the secret. It's like, if Steve can get it right for some of these kids, then I'm sure they can go to the top.
There's no if. We will get it right.
You know.
It's when they get to the top.
And it's obviously a gamble from your point of view anyway to go into this promotions game. I mean, I know that your background was in racing and finance, and you know, I mean, boxing isn't the natural stand-up thing. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get into boxing promoting because it's such an obvious, easy route to go down.
Yeah, I mean, it was done for Olivia, and I've always stated that it was done for her. But anything that I do well, and I want to make sure that everything is done properly. And I look and I see the mistakes that are made out there. Every boxer that we talk to, we sit down at the start and we map it out. We did that with Ali Adams. We mapped out as we know what happened in the end. But he wanted that. He got his opportunity. You see, Neil Machi, we got him his opportunity. He was ranked 20 in the world. It's unfortunately he's got a knee injury that's prevented him from fighting. And his career may now be over, but everything that we did with every boxer was totally mapped out. I just don't understand why a boxer just goes from one fight to the other with no plan, and 90%, 80% of them do that. We sit there and say, right, in 12 months we're going to be here, in 6 months we're going to be here, and I plan it strategically like I do my clients' money and finance, like we do with racehorses in races. Yeah. There's no difference, it's the same principle, and that's what we want to bring to boxing, so that boxers have proper goals, proper aims, and can achieve what they want.
And it's those plans, you touched on it, obviously yourself, Steve, in terms of, you know, the managing of boxers, which are all crucial, because some very talented guys have ended up as serious journeymen, haven't they?
And I'll tell you the way that it happens is that you've got so many good fighters, and it's like you said, the ones that are looked after, the ones that are managed well, are the ones that get looked after. But you know, boxing, you've got so many boxers coming through. Boxers are really like a bit of meat on a conveyor belt. They come and they go, and they just sort of go pass through, and you've got to be looked after. And we've seen so many good fighters that are not looked after, and unfortunately, you know, you don't hear nothing of them. Their careers just sort of, they get used and slung in at the wrong time. So the secret is just looking after these fighters.
No, I don't think that. I mean, some of the times I think that. I mean, Dean, I'm sure, when Dean Byrne took Horta, he wanted that fight. He really thought he could win. And his management obviously thought he could win. But
Steve,
you know.
But Steve, what it is that a fighter will always think he can win.
I know.
That's the problem you've got.
I know.
So we're coming through, and I'm 6-0, and all of a sudden you've got the British champion. And I'm thinking to myself, I can beat him. Now in 12 months I could beat him. Because I think I can beat him doesn't mean that I'm going to beat him. It's all about timing, and the fighter's the first one to say,
pull the reins in,
I want that.
Well, we did it about 3 weeks ago. I went to see Lee Markham at the Sparta Gym in Chingford, and while I was there, we were offered the fight with John Ryder for the Southern Area title, and everybody there was excited about doing it. I immediately calmed the excitement down, as I felt it was the wrong fight. I didn't see why Lee should be. He's training for a 6-round fight, should divert to a 10-round fight and fight John Ryder, where he'd be the underdog on a Matchroom show. And it really was of no interest. So I said, basically, no, we're not taking that fight. Lee's happy with that. But other people would have took that fight. Lee may have lost, but he would have been stacked against him. I want Lee to go for the title when the odds are in his favour. And that's what's going to happen. He's not going to go with the odds stacked against him.
And just finally about this London Calling show, is this the time now to obviously come in with Sports Tonight Live, with Primetime, to get it on your free-to-air, now with everything that's happened with the boxing team, the men and the women doing so superbly? Do you think that it's just obviously sparked a little bit more enthusiasm across both codes, if you like?
Definitely. I think with the Olympics as well, like, everyone now is buzzing for all sports. So the boxing, like, everyone's like, oh, I want to watch more boxing, more boxing. So they'll be looking out for it on TV, and the fact that it's free to watch for everyone, they haven't got to pay a subscription or a pay-per-view or anything, is going to get a lot more people tuning in and getting back behind the boxes like in the 1980s.
But we need to deliver on the night as well. We all need to deliver from your point of view producing the show to our point of view with the fights we make, and also the ring entrances and different things we're going to do to spice up the evening. And we're going to want to make it an event that people tune into and say, yeah, we want to watch that again, and get people to come and watch live boxing as well. That's really important.
Well, it is live boxing. It's London's Calling. It is at the York Hall, Bethnal Green. Traditionally, I suppose, a spiritual home of London, certainly in this part of the world anyway. And you'll get all the action, of course, right here on Sports Tonight Live. This is The Fight Show. This is The Fight Show, and we are still talking London calling at York Hall next week. All live, of course, right here on Sports Tonight Live. You'll see all the fights. And a sensational bill we've got with us now in the studio, as well as Spencer, of course, Richard Clark, who's got a couple of fighters on the bill. You look after them, Richard, and also Philip Bowes, who's fighting. You're looking fighting fit, obviously, and you've got a tough one with Dave O'Connor.
Yeah.
You've only had 3 fights professionally. We're going to get a bit more into you and your career in a second, but Dave O'Connor on this bill, what do you expect?
Yeah, I expected it to be a good fight. I looked at his record. I know he's had 2 losses, 1-4, but I'm going to win, so that's what I can say, really, on that aspect of it.
And that's at light welter?
Yeah, light welterweight, yeah.
And Richard, you've got a couple of lads on the bill. Tell us about them.
Yeah, on the undercard from Brentwood, we've got a young lad called Joe Mullender. He goes under the moniker of Smoking Joe. He's a nice sort of come forward. Funnily enough, he's got a similar sort of style, really, sort of bends at the waist, and he's all pressure. He'll be having his 3rd professional fight. And top of the bill, we've got Chris Ajay Dua in his dream fight. It's the one he wanted. He's got himself an area title challenge, and yeah, so he's well up for that, and we're really looking forward to it.
And those 2 at middle and light middle, respectively.
Yeah, Joe's the middle.
And I know, Philip, you've had a decent, well, let's say decent, a very good amateur career. You've bided your time turning pro. You're 28 now.
Yeah.
You represented Jamaica, Commonwealth Games. You've obviously enjoyed the amateur experience. So, how did it come about in terms of turning pro when you did? And tell us a little bit more about your amateur career.
Basically, when I was amateur, I enjoyed the the family network of going away together as like a family. You train together, you go out together, you go cinemas together, whatever. So I liked that aspect of it, and I thought I'm not going to turn pro until I got that kind of setup also, like as a pro. So my manager Mickey Moo, he was like sponsoring me at the time, and he started set up a gym, and he said to me, well, if you want to turn pro, I can guide you in the right direction, kind of thing. So I thought, okay, it sounds good. But I still didn't turn pro straight away. After the Commonwealth Games, which I got to the quarterfinals of, I stayed like in the gym, but I didn't really pursue a professional career. I kind of just chilled for a year, and then after that, we sat down together with him and my dad, and we said, yeah, it's time to go professional in a way, and yeah, the rest is history.
But along association with Repton, of course.
Yeah, Repton. The Repton was is the best club, like the best amateur club in I can't say the world, but in London, most definitely is.
You might have something to say.
So how have you found the change from the amateurs to the pros? How have you found the adjusting to
Well, it's funny enough, I still think, well, I'm a fighter that moves on my toes and I move a lot. I think the amateur pedigree that I had has helped me a lot as a professional, you know what I mean? I mean, I still got to sit on my punches a bit more and stuff like that, but I mean, I'm getting adjusted now into the.
And you're moving on up now to 6 rounds. It's the first 6-round fight.
Yeah, first 6 rounder. Yeah.
And you found that going the 4-round distance not a problem for you.
Yeah, I didn't find it a problem at all. They spoke to me and they said like, we've got a 6-rounder fight, like 6-round fight for you. Like, what do you think about it? I said, yeah, well, I've done 4 reasonably well, so I thought we could take that fight, So.
It's live boxing coverage, which we all want to see, of course. So from your point of view, in terms of as a manager of boxers, what shape is the pro game in?
That's an interesting question, because if you go back and look at boxing newses every 10 years, if you pick out an editorial and go back over 50 years, I can guarantee that you'll find an editorial in there which says that boxing's dying. Honestly, you can go back to the mid to late 80s when we had the big 4, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, and find people who tell you then that boxing was on its last legs, and it's hard to believe. And then you move on into this country, and we had terrific fights, didn't we, that were being put on. Ben Eubank, Watson, and then Bruno, of course. Invariably, I think television has a massive part to play. I'd like to see boxing more on the back pages of the media. I think the last real big one, I think really that the public got to grips with, was perhaps Barry McGuigan in a big way. Yeah. Terrestrially, but.
I think that, not just the Olympics now, we've done in the Olympics now, but I think boxing at the moment, I think boxing is doing really well. They have got TV coverage, they've got the coverage of Sky that are sort of building these fighters. You've got your Cole Frotches, you've got the middleweights with the Barker and the Macklin, you've got the super bantamweights with Quigg and Frampton. So that, there's a lot of competitive weights out there at the moment, and I think I think actually boxing's doing really well. And now with this boost from the Olympics, and picking up the 2 golds from the men and Nicola Adams picking up the gold as well, I think that, you know, boxing really is in a good place at the moment.
And inevitably after an Olympic Games or a big amateur tournament, and I mean, you don't get much bigger than on your own doorstep in London and bringing home gold medals like we have. Invariably the game flourishes after that, you know, and I don't think the game's in a bad state at all. You'll always get your naysayers, you'll always get people who sort of say it's on its last legs. You know, as I say, go back down the years, you'll always find them. But I'm quite happy with the state of the game. I think there's enough work out there for the lads. I think the cream rises to the top. I think if you're good enough, you'll flourish, and I think you'll, you know.
We heard all through the Olympics about legacy, and the danger is it's that kind of Wimbledon effect where everyone wants to be Andy Murray and picks up a racket
for a week.
For a week. It's keeping them in the gyms. But I mean, you know yourself, boxing needs structure, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you
definitely.
talked about it.
Yeah.
It's the family, it's the structure, it's the clear lines of progression that sometimes people haven't quite seen, and that's what we need to do, don't we? Everyone involved.
I think if you go around the amateur gyms now, you travel the amateur gyms, any amateur gym you go in at the moment is packed. You know, from our little amateur boxing club, Finchley, where Joshua comes from, Anthony Joshua comes from. You go down there and it is absolutely polluted with kids. There's no space in there, and I think that that's only going to boost that. And you're talking about, you know, that family connection and everything else, which amateurs, you know, really is. But when they go down there, and these kids now who are going to go into these gyms, they're going to make new friends and meet a new circle, and that will keep the kids there. So I think that effectively, it's only going to relish, and it's only going to improve. And I think all these kids are going. I think you mentioned there, you touched on they go there for a week and that's it. But out of every 10, one of them will stay. So I think that effectively, it's only going to be good for boxing.
And also as well, you know, the role model aspect that we've just seen from the Olympics is second to none. It's, you know, invariably in the past we've seen boxing give itself a black eye, and I've got to say I'm proud to be connected to the game, you know, in the small way that I am, because I think that our team did fantastically well at the Olympics, and I think it's fantastic for our youth to have someone to look up to, like the Anthony Joshuas of this world and the young girl Adams. It's fantastic. I think we're in a good state. And
they need to see that, so the TV coverage is all important, because we need to see
I think that'll follow.
The new stars, don't they? And I suppose from your point of view, you're putting yourself in the shop window in a big way, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, when you're on telly, it's not a case of if you get to the York Hall, you can see it now. You know, it's nationwide, free to wear, and it's your chance to shine.
Yeah, basically, like, you know, everyone should take their opportunity with open hands. Basically, you know, like if you get a chance to be on TV. Take it, you know what I mean? Don't just be like, don't freeze or don't be scared. Be like, look, I've got opportunity, let me just take it with both hands and let me go out there and prove to people that I am as good as the promoters are saying I am, or, you know.
Do you think sometimes as well, though, boxing suffered by its own problems, if you like, in terms of not portraying the right attitude sometimes, in terms of a lot of the media hype that surrounds fights. Well, but if you look at the Olympics and the smiling faces and, you know, maybe inject a bit more of the enthusiasm and enjoyment, because it's a sport that I think everyone involved enjoys.
You know, I think that a big knock that boxing had to say when Audley won the gold medal, and Audley was his own worst enemy, because what he'd done was he said that he was going to do this and he was going to produce and he didn't give the public what they wanted, and that was a massive knock for boxing. You know what I mean? Because he said one thing, and he didn't go out there and produce. Now, as you were saying there, you get that opportunity, and you have to produce. That's part of the whole package. And I think that people now realise that the public are not as forgiving as they used to be, and they're not going to accept it. If you're going to go out there and you're going to open your mouth and you're going to say, right, this is what I'm going to do, you have to deliver.
Especially if it's your licence money footing the bill for it, you know.
Yeah.
And what we're going to see from you on the night? Tell us about your style.
Well, basically, I'm a slick southpaw, you know. Skills pay bills. I'll just put on a showcase basically for the people that's coming to watch me. Also, I'd like to say a big thanks to Steve Goodwin, because if it wasn't for him, this opportunity wouldn't have come for me also. Yeah, thanks to my manager Mickey Moo. And yeah, just 15th of September, Quicksilver will be in the house.
Who came up with the name Quicksilver?
You know, it's funny, he's come from like the amateur days, and you know, I was quick, so they said, oh, you're quick like Quicksilver, and if we touch you, you know, like you're like poison. Like it's a long story, but yeah, basically it's from amateur days anyway.
And now at 28, you feel that you've just come into the program at your physical peak? Can you give yourself any time kind of limits as to what you can achieve?
You know, basically, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I live the life. You know what I mean? I don't really party when I'm training. I definitely don't party when I'm training. But I mean, we'll sit down with Steve Goodwin, we'll sit down with my manager, and we'll, you know, construct a plan basically. We're not gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. It's all about orchestrating your career in the right way, kind of thing, you know. So.
Well, best of luck against Dave O'Connor. Look forward to that, and best of luck with all the guys. And I know that you know there's going to be some crackers on that.
Top of the bill should be a real barnstormer. I think that'll be one for the connoisseur.
It is London Calling. It's at your call, and you can see it all here on Sports Tonight Live. This is the Fight Show. Welcome back. This is the Fight Show on Sports Tonight Live. Now, Spencer, we've been joined by Ben Calder-Smith, boxing writer, big boxing fan as well. We're going to move on from London Calling. We're going to talk about the other boxing and taking place this weekend. There's some very interesting matchups. And Ben, firstly, tell us a bit about your background and basically what you do and what's caught your eye about the weekend ahead.
Well, I've been a massive boxing enthusiast for years and years. I actually got into it about 25 years ago, the Larry Holmes-Michael Spinks rematch. That was when I was obviously much younger. That caught my attention. I've been following it avidly ever since. I've been to several fights, and it's a great sport. It's a great sport. This weekend, the Tony Bellew-Edison Miranda fight, I'm looking forward to that in a big way. I think it's a good test for Tony Bellew. He's shown that he's a quality fighter. He challenged, obviously, Nathan Cleverly about a year ago for the WBO title. Even though he lost, I think he came out of that fight with a lot of credibility. He fought excellently. Since then, he's won the British light heavyweight title. And his opponent, Edison Miranda, is a proven fighter himself. I think he's slightly on the downside of his career. He's lost 4 of his last 7 fights. He's a big puncher, and he's fought some top-level opposition.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, they've both got very powerful mouths, haven't they? Because they both like a bit of chat. I mean, ahead of this one, Miranda's saying he's going to stop Bellew, and Bellew is never shy when it comes to the kind of trash talking. So, right. I mean, this in fact wasn't top of the bill, or it was going to be joint top of the bill, wasn't it? But your pal Darren Barker's had to pull out again with
Darren Barker, proud mind, tore some tendons in his arm. Unfortunately for Darren, again, he's picked up another injury. It's put him on the sidelines for another 3 months or so. But up steps, you know, Miranda and Tony Bellew, and what a great fight. I mean, 2 big punchers. Tony Bellew we've seen before. You know, if you do catch him, he will go. We saw that against Oval McKenzie. How he ever got up, I don't know, but he got up and he won the fight, so showed a lot of heart, a lot of determination, come back since then, put up some tremendous performances for world titles, and, you know, I think he's looking to get up on that world stage again, and Miranda poses the perfect test for him. Yes, he has been a little bit out of form in recent fights, but spoke to Eddie Hearn yesterday, and Eddie told me, looked at him, seen him training, looks in phenomenal shape, and he comes to win this fight because he realises, Miranda, that he will fall into that journeyman category. He doesn't want to be there. He wants another shot at the world title. He's boxed for the world title before. Arthur Abrahams he boxed, and he gave him a torrid time.
Well, if you remember, he's the guy that gave Abrahams
absolutely
the head twice the size.
Well, really bad broken jaw.
Yeah.
Never really boxed the same since that fight, you know, perhaps lost a little bit of ambition, but still poses a big threat. And like I said, he can whack. And against Tony Bellew, you know, that could be exciting. I mean, it should be a real good fight, and there's some tremendous undercard as well.
Tony Bellew's got to use his head a bit, though, hasn't he? Because he can get drawn into he can be open, he can get put down, as Spencer said about McKenzie, but he can box, he can...
Do you know what? I think that's what makes him exciting. You remember when he boxed over McKenzie the first time, they were both up and down like yo-yos. Fight was really, really exciting. When he boxed McKenzie the second time, totally different strategy, totally different fight plan, boxed on the back foot, boxed perfectly, and won a clear 12-round decision. Now, that's what makes Bellew so exciting, is that he fights with his heart on his sleeve, and he may just do that here, getting drawn in with a crowd roaring him on. So, I mean, expect anything, but certainly expect fireworks.
And he's got a good punch as well. Bellew's last fight, Danny McIntosh, I think McIntosh may have slightly walked onto the punch. It was a massive right-hand punch that stopped McIntosh in that 5th round. And I think at the stage Miranda is at, if Bellew can find those sort of punches and land them, Bellew could get a very impressive win, but he's got to be careful.
What's the future for Bellew? Because the one mark on his record is Nathan Cleverly. Yeah. Which it was a good fight. It was a very tight fight. It was
I was there, I was commentating. There was not a lot in it. I think that you know, I think that Bellew went there with the will to win, and he certainly showed that. And Cleverly wasn't expecting such a performance, and there really was not a lot in it. It was a split decision, and so that proved himself on the world stage. And I think that he can certainly get there again. I think with the right guidance and the right opportunity, I think Bellew could become world champion, but he has to overcome these sort of opponents, and Miranda really is a live weight and dangerous.
But you look at it, I mean, Nathan Cleverly is still talking about Frotch. He's still talking about potentially fighting at super middle.
Yeah.
You know, Bellew, got a different kind of frame on him. I mean,
Yeah.
what's the long-term goal? What can he do?
Bellew wouldn't go down to super middle for one. He used to box as a super heavy as an amateur, believe it or not. He won the ABAs as a super heavy and a heavyweight. So, you know, I think that he's come to light heavy, and he's got to be looking for those big fights. Then we've got Chad Dawson. Chad Dawson's fighting against Andre Ward. That's down at super middle, but Chad Dawson is the light heavyweight. So them sort of fights is where Bellew could be really looking. A
good fight for Bellew would be against Babet Shumanov, the WBA title holder at light heavyweight. He's a good fighter. Another couple of fights that could be a good test for Shumanov to fight Bellew.
It is interesting that you mentioned the Ward Dawson fight, because again they're two guys that you know, Ward is the slight favourite for obvious reasons because of the skills that he showed in you know, beating Frosch well, handsomely. But also with Dawson, you know, he's the bigger man. He's obviously coming down the division. He's taken a huge gamble, and he's also fighting in Ward's back garden, isn't he? Basically,
I saw Dawson beat Glenn Johnson out in Florida. I was out there working on that fight, so I was with him the whole week, watched him training in the gyms. Never been so impressed by a fighter, you know, not just the way he conducts himself in the ring, but out the ring as well. He's a pure gentleman, so he's not been trash talking this fight. He boxed as a middleweight for a lot of his pro career anyway. Went up to light heavyweight, won the world title at light heavyweight where the opportunity arose. But coming down to super middleweight, I don't think it's going to affect him too much. I think he makes it comfortably. I just think Ward may be a little bit too slippery, and I think that he'll pick up a clear point swing. But you can't write Dawson off. You know, if he won, it would be no surprise. I mean, he's done it before. Look at the way he beat Bernard Hopkins. You know, second time around, beat him convincingly. So that tells you, forget Hopkins' age, he's still a really good fighter. So that tells you, I mean, this is a real exciting fight as well.
Obviously, we'll keep an eye on Ward because of the Froch. And Froch now, with the Butte win, is back up there again, isn't he?
Yeah.
Ward looks like, you know,
I agree with Spencer.
He could be around for a while as the number one.
I agree with Spencer. I think Ward will win. I don't think it'll be particularly straightforward. I think a lot depends on how Chad Dawson can manage coming down in weight. It's an unusual direction to go. Most fighters go up in weight.
The problem Dawson's got is one the speed and the movement. And also that Ward doesn't mind standing there and roughing fighters up, as we saw when he boxed Cole Froch. And I was speaking to Cole after that fight. Cole didn't expect that. He said that's what threw him and threw his whole fight plan out. The fact that Ward sort of took the fight to him, took away beat him at his own game, roughed him up and beat him, and sort of totally threw him. So, you know, Ward is good at adjusting. I think that Dawson, if Ward stands with him, I think that Dawson, you know, could pull off a surprise victory. But I just think that Ward would be too slick. He'll be moving, throwing those combinations and take him to a victory.
And just stepping back to the bill over here is what Lee Purdy's got a great opportunity as well, hasn't he? He's got a big hitter. It's Carrasco, is it, that he's fighting?
Yeah. 16 fights, 13 knockouts. Relatively untested, but fights. I spoke to Eddie again. Eddie's told me that he's a carbon copy of Purdy. One thing you can expect is fireworks in that fight. They'll both go to the centre of the ring and they'll be both trading big punches. Now, Purdy's downfall is that he doesn't like to slip too many shots. And if he gets caught, you know, it could end early. But again, it's one of those flip them, you know, 50-50 fights.
Look forward to that.
They're both excellent pressure fighters. They will both come forward. As Spencer said, it'll be a good fight. Could be a great fight. I just think Purdy is slightly sharper, throwing his punches. But, I mean, Carrasco is a typically tough Argentinian fighter. You go down the ages, these fighters are steel tough.
Absolutely.
I've seen a couple of Carrasco fights, and he is a real pressure fighter, incredibly strong. I just think Purdy has the edge in sharpness. I think he will land enough to... I'm going for a distance fight, but it could be a great fight.
There is a little bit of a renaissance with Argentinian fighting anyway at the moment, isn't it? Obviously with Martinez in action, which we'll talk about in a little while. But another fighter that's going to be coming to our screens fairly soon.
Yeah.
And you talk about, he brought the game to him, changing games, Freddie Flintoff. That we're hearing about, of course, now wants to fight. And it's not the white collar route. Nah. He's not going down that angle. Yeah. I know you know all about that, but in terms of preparing fighters and judging fights like that. But this is a serious crack, he says, at having a pro heavyweight boxing contest.
Yeah. And I think that it will be a pro heavyweight boxing contest. I don't think he's looking for a career in it. I think that right now the history of Freddie Flintoff is he's always been a massive boxing fan. You know, good friends with Ricky Hatton. He followed Ricky to all the shows, always watched the Amir Khan fights. So I think it's just a little passion he's got burning inside him. It's cricket, you know.
Well, I've actually seen him, Ricky put him through the paces once. I was in the gym once. I did a book with Ricky and I interviewed Freddie as part of that book because of his involvement in the gym that day. And, you know, he was obviously very into it. We're going back 5 years or so or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, he's still playing cricket at the time, but it's obviously great for fitness. He's always wanted to incorporate that, I think, in his cricket training. But it's very different.
Listen, Dom, that's what I was going to say. What, you know, when reality actually comes, I mean, it's all right getting in there, sparring in the gym with your 14 or 16 ounce gloves and your head guard on. Now, when reality comes and you get in there and you've got the crowd, so you've got the nervous energy burning already, you've got no head guard on, you've got 10 ounce gloves. It'll be a big shock to the system for him.
We've seen it before as well, though,
I don't think he'll be wanting to do it after the very first fight. I think his career will be a very short one, maybe one win and then over.
Yeah, unbeaten.
Hats off to him for wanting to try it, but it has happened before. We've had Curtis Woodhouse, the former football player.
A very different scenario, though, really, isn't it? Curtis was serious from day one, and it's always burning him to do it as a profession rather than, I think, Freddie's having a go.
He packed his career up basically to box, whereas...
the easier life that footballers have, and this is a guy, Curtis, who achieved great things on a football pitch. England under-21 captain, you know, was doing having a very nice career, earning a great living, which he turned his back on to box, which might seem crazy to many, considering the riches are awful. But this is a different scenario. Flintoff, of course, he's retired now anyway.
Yeah, and he is 34, I think, 34 years old. So I think it could just be wanting to satisfy a little urge he's got, perhaps. But hats off to him. Good luck to him. You know, I don't think, I'm not going to insult the whole thing by calling it a gimmick or anything. I think he's too sensible to realise that you don't come into boxing half-heartedly.
You know, we've seen the Sonny Bill Williams, who's an All Black.
I'll tell you
he's
what
had 6 pro fights.
It's just a passion. Like I said, he's been a massive boxing fan. He's always been around boxers. Barry McGuinness offered to help him out. It's just a little, you know, it's a little venture, and it'll be, you know, a little mission for him to just get a fight under his belt and just say that he's done it. I've trained people before that have always had this burning desire to want to fight, and once they've done it and it's out of the system, they never want to do it again. I think that Freddie, it'll be a little bit similar to that.
See, those punch bags don't punch back.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But they still tire you out. Exactly.
Yeah, they do. Well, more of the same to come anyway. And remember, London Calling right here on Sports Tonight Live, September the 15th. This is the Fight Show on Sports Tonight Live.
On Saturday, the 15th of September, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. comes to primetime to defend his WBC middleweight title against Sergio Martinez. Plus, Brit-Irish Matthew Macklin takes on Joachim Alcine. The undefeated WBA Super Bantamweight champion Guillermo Rigondeaux defends his title against Roberto Marroquin. And Martinez faces off against Beltran Jr. for the WBO Super Featherweight Championship. To buy, call 0871-200-4444. Irish customers call 152-0666-006. Chavez versus Martinez. Live and exclusive on Primetime. Channel 498 on Sky, Virgin On Demand, and primetimelive.co.uk.
Welcome back. This is the Fight Show on Sports Tonight Live, and we've just been seeing there a bit of a trailer for all the action stateside with Martinez, again, who's, you know, 37 years of age against Julio Cesar Jr, 26, and seemingly on the upward curve. You look at that, though, and it's an intriguing one right here on primetime as well, isn't it? Channel 498.
Yeah.
How do you call it?
Well, listen, it's a tough one too, called Martinez. You said 18 months ago you would have been a massive favourite. Since then, Martinez has been on a slight decline, and Chavez, you know, on the up. I mean, he's looked good in his last couple of fights. Chavez, Andy Lee looks tremendous against, and you know, Martinez not so good against Darren Barker and Matthew Macklin. So again, it's another one of those flip of a coins. But I think I'm going to put my neck on the line and go for Chavez. I just fancy the timing might be perfect. Everybody's career's got to come to an end sooner or later. Martinez has been around for a long, long time. We saw him over here many years ago, but boxing over here against Richard Williams even, and that was some 10, 15 years ago. And so he's been around a long time at the top, and I just think Chavez might be the right place, right time, and I think he's improving all the time, and I fancy Chavez for an upset victory.
Well, let's see what Mr. Benny Ricardo, of course, who's going to be commentating for primetime on this fight, what he thinks of this fight. I know you would be close to both camps in the build-up, Benny, so it's certainly got us talking here. What's the word from stateside? You're still thinking about this one. It's a big question. Can you hear us, Benny?
Hello.
Oh, there we are. I just gave you the big build-up, but really, getting right to it. Martinez against Chavez Jr. You've been in both camps. How would you call this one at this point?
Hello.
No, we're not getting him at the moment. We'll get back to Benny. We'll just sort out the little sound issue there. But Chavez Jr., in terms of who he is, that's been the biggest problem in his career, isn't it, Ben, in terms of the
Yeah,
ultimate
he has.
Mexican warrior is his dad?
Yeah, absolutely. He's had this slight stigma over him about who his father is. I think the criticism on that front has been slightly unfair. I think he is starting to come into his own, make a name for himself. I'm going for Chavez to pit Martinez next weekend. Style-wise, Martinez likes to fight on the whole from the outside. He likes a bit of space. Chavez likes getting inside. I just think Chavez is slightly fresher. He's a big guy as well. He's bigger than I'm expecting him to be from what I've seen of him recently. I think he will have the strength to surprise Martinez, take him out of his stride, and pull off what will be a slight upset. I'm going from 2 points.
Yeah, I think one of Martinez's main assets was his speed, you know, combination punching. We haven't seen that in recent times. Yes, he's got good foot movement, throws a lot of single shots, a lot of pot shots with 1s and 1-2s, where we used to see him throw punches in bunches, 4s and 5s. And I think that's been missing from Martinez in recent times. Darren Barker put up a tremendous performance, as did Macklin. And I just think that, you know, I think that Chavez just looks to be improving all the time. I think he's come out of his dad's shadows. And for me, I think the younger, hungrier man will pick this one.
We've just had a big thumbs up there from Benny Ricardo, who we've introduced you already, Benny. We know all about you and your work over there, but you are calling this one for prime time. How do you see it going?
You know, I think this is going to be a great fight, and I don't want to overuse the adage, styles make fights, but, you know, that's what it is here. I mean, you've got Sergio Martinez. I know you guys talk about that he hadn't looked that good in his last two fights against Barker and Macklin. This is the most athletic fighter Julio Cesar Chavez will have ever faced. And he is a great closer. He probably should be in Mensa in terms of how quickness he's able to think in the ring and the things that he does. So that's going to pose a problem for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., having never seen anybody like this. And how do you prepare for a guy like that who is very unorthodox in the way he punches? He's got tremendous speed. And usually your biggest shock after all the sparring is when you get into the ring to find out just how quick, you know, this guy happens to be. Let's go the other way. When you talk about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., here's a guy that literally had no amateur career at all. He has grown on the job, and I thought his best fight today was this fight against Andy Lee. I really thought Andy Lee was going to give him a lot of problems. I called that fight, and I was amazed at it's almost like hitting a wall, because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was able to just walk right through the punches of Andy Lee and deliver a knockout punch, you know, finally in the 7th round. But what I was astonished in that particular fight was the fact that the judges, which was on the WBC as an open scoring, had only given Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. 1 round up to the knockout. So that's be interesting, which kind of leads me to believe that the judges aren't always appreciating what Chavez is doing in the ring. And by the way, the judges for this fight are going to be Stanley Christodoulou, Adelaide Bird, and Dave Moretti. And then Tony Weeks is going to be the referee for this particular fight. So I think Tony did a great job in this fight as far as letting these guys fight. And so I think it's got all the makings of a really great fight. And I've never seen Martinez so keyed up for a fight, even looking at Chavez's father and saying, take a look at your son's face now, because he's not going to look like that after I get done with him.
So, Benny, you talk about the athleticism of Martinez. Now, you know, he's not getting any younger. He has been around a long time. I've mentioned that before. And yes, you know, we see the pre-fight build-up all the time, and, you know, about the hunger's back, the fire's back in the belly and stuff. But don't you think that he's just ever so slightly slowed? And if he, you know, what made Martinez different from the others was the speed of punch, the speed of foot, the combination punching, and that just seems to have slowed ever so slightly. And if it has slowed, that gives Chavez a great chance.
Exactly, and I think you're absolutely right on your observation. And by the way, I think all the British fans know Martinez much better than we know him in the United States. In fact, that has been one of the problems with him getting big fights. Everybody keeps saying, you know, well, he's not well enough known in the United States. So I know you guys are very familiar with him. I think, you know, at 37, again, having no amateur career, getting started at 20, I really don't think he's that old in terms of boxing. Las Vegas has a policy for fighters over 35, makes them go for a complete thorough, and it has to be a thorough approval of the commission. He passed all that. You know, he's one of those guys that the way he fights requires a young guy, a young guy's youth and exuberance, and almost like Roy Jones Jr. You know, when Roy Jones Jr. was doing what I call taking a picture, you know, because he used to drop that left shoulder and then would just have enough quickness to just get that chin out of the way. and all of a sudden now they slow down. So I call it taking a picture. Now the punch is getting there. That worries me a little bit about Martinez. But again, I think his quickness is still enough for this at this particular point to still beat Chavez. Although every time I get fired up about Martinez winning the fight, I think of him fighting Paul Williams, who was a taller fighter.
He was, but Benny, if I could just interject slightly, and sorry to do this, just give us a very quick prediction, and if you had to give it in one line, how it's going to go.
I think it's going to be Martinez. I think Martinez's speed is going to overwhelm him. I don't think that Chavez is going to be able to go ahead and get to the body of Martinez to be able to do the damage he needs to do. And I think it's going to be a boxing lesson for Chavez Jr. But again, at the age of 26, a loss is not the end of the world. It's just a boxing lesson.
Yes, indeed. Benny, we'll talk to you next week. All the build-up, of course, are here for London Calling, and then the Martinez-Chavez one on Primetime, Channel 498. Thanks, Benny. Now, he makes so many good points, Benny, anyway, doesn't he? In terms of
absolutely.
It's the reason why he's the #1 guy.
It wouldn't be a shock if Martinez won by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think he's going to give Chavez a boxing lesson, as Benny alluded to there. I think Martinez is going to be surprised that Chavez is more...
I think, well, it's all about timing, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, if you mentioned this fight 18 months ago, everybody would have said, no, a mismatch. Chavez still way off the top. Martinez, pound for pound, one of the best fighters. It's all about timing, and I think that the timing is just right for Chavez here. Yes, Martinez starts favourite. Yes, more people expect Martinez to win. I'm just going to put my neck in line and go, Chavez.
And timing.
Absolutely.
Macklin's on that bill.
Yep.
Absolutely, against the former world champion.
Yep. Macklin, yeah, exactly. I'll see him, but Macklin, I'm sure, would fancy Martinez now just that little bit down the line. As you say, it's fine margins, isn't it?
I think that that's maybe why they've got Macklin on the bill. They're thinking about all this fight. Macklin could be one of Macklin's next fights, the winner of those two. So exciting times ahead for the British middleweight, certainly.
Definitely.
Well, we'll get the insight from both camps ahead of the fight show for next week, and of course there'll be all to talk about in terms of London's calling as well. Yeah. But it's kind of we'll see. We'll get a better feel really for predictions next week. I think when you see them and they line up together, you just get that little feel for it, don't you? In terms of how
you do certainly when at the weigh-in, you see the way they're cut, you see the way they're chiseled. You can tell whether a guy's struggled to make the weight because he looks too dry or whether he's just made it perfectly. So next week we'll know more.
As ever, Spencer, been a pleasure. Ben, thanks very much for your company. This is Sports Night Live. This is The Fight Show.